Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Sensitive Stability Trauma Tuesday live show, where we go live on Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. US EST. And we talk about how trauma is interwoven with borderline personality disorder and a bit of trauma in general by itself. Our co-host and sensitive stability coach, our trauma specialist, and my good friend David Keck will be invited to join us now throughout the duration of this show. So thank you for tuning in. How are you doing, David?
Hey, I'm okay. How are you?
Good, good. I'm just going to adjust my volume here because we always have that feedback. It sounds good now. We're good to go.
Okay, good.
Yep, good to go. You want to take it off from here, or how do you want to proceed?
Yeah, no, I'll take it off. First, I want to preface with, as a lot of
Nice
you
shirt.
know, I've been under. I'm always going to
I
represent.
love it. I love it. It
I
looks really good. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Thanks. I used to get so embarrassed, like, oh, I can't wear my merch out like
Hmm.
that. But I love it. I'm proud of it. I'm doing it. I even have my joggers on
Nice.
that
It's
say
comfortable.
"surviving." Yeah.
Nice,
So
nice.
I Thanks so much. But I will preface with be patient with me. As a lot of you know, I've been under the weather the past few days. And so I probably sound nasally. I may cough. You may see me dig into my bag of cough drops.
Geez, that's big, man. That's a huge bag.
So there's been a lot of coughing.
Yeah.
There's been
I eat
it
those
it
like
it
candy, so I
is.
get it. Totally understand.
I was laying in bed looking at
Mhm.
the cough drops around me, and I was like, "Can you overdose on cough drops?" So we'll see. It's a trial and error phase at this point, but I'm so excited for tonight. I'm so excited to
Me too.
be here and to talk. And so what I do a lot, Kevin, is where I'm behind the scenes a lot with the lives that we do every morning, and where I also comments, I find certain topics and trends and questions
Right.
that people are asking. And so I love a good Excel spreadsheet. And so I'm the king of that. And one thing that I have found very common, regardless of the topic of video that you release, is people ask about trauma responses.
Right.
And trauma responses in general, which is a passion of mine that I developed the hands-on way from
Right.
experiencing, but also the difference in what that can mean for different, personality disorders, for
Sure.
different traumas. So that's kind of what I wanted to touch on today. So
Okay.
I'm going to start out with the definition of it, and then we're going to bring the BPD side into it. But generally speaking, a trauma response is the way that we cope with traumatic experiences. We cope with the traumatic experiences in such ways that best fits our needs. And there are different mechanisms. There's four specific ones that are pretty common in the umbrella of trauma response, which is the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Okay.
So I think that we can all relate to it, BPD related or not.
Absolutely. Yeah. What was the last one that you listed? You said flight. Repeat the four again.
Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Nice. Four F's. I got it. Yeah. Want me to comment on that? Is this my point of comment here?
Yeah, anytime. It's open
Okay.
floor, man.
Um,
This is a discussion.
yeah, it's interesting that you have broken them down into categories, and that that's been the end delineation of your study for that, because it does fit paradigms of borderline interpretation of trauma and how we go about responding, our coping mechanisms that do have different delineations ourselves within the condition. Not everybody's the same, and I think a lot of people overlook the fact that borderline, as a whole, we have some things in common, and that's good because it means that the paradigms that we create to treat these types of problems, say things like our remission program, it will work. Part of the reason that we have custom sessions, one-on-one sessions, is to personalize things for them. That's important. The personalization part, you ever pick up a workbook to try to get ahead of some trauma or something of that nature, and it's kind of ambiguous, kind of generalized. You're answering the questions, but it doesn't really feel like you're going anywhere. That is part of the problem here. And the solution is the personalized fit, which when you look at something like the definition of trauma response that you've laid out, where you say, we've got fight, we've got flight, we've got freeze, and we've got fawn. Specific types of actions. Now, just because we all have borderline personality disorder does not mean that we have the same delineation of coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. Some of us fight. Some of us become extremely violent when we are challenged, criticized, or whatever, and that is invoking that trauma response. Some of us run, and some of us do different combinations of these. I have literally walked through each walk of these different delineations that you have just described. As a circumstance, for me, I was a chameleon, so to speak. I would have every delineation of BPD you can imagine, every manifestation. So I completely, I respect the fact that they are broken up into easy, recognizable categories. That is my initial response to that. How is that?
That brilliant as always, Kevin.
Thank you. Don't stroke my ego too much. It's gigantic.
But I think that what is also important to remember, and what I try to hit on a lot of times, pretty much in every conversation we've had, is that we have these buckets that we want to put things in, right? And so I like categorizing these things as we can put them in buckets. But I think where people also get a little lost is that if you froze the situation, the scenario, doesn't mean you're going to freeze at every scenario.
That's right.
All the F's will matter,
yeah.
And I will say too that Liz said fawn is basically people pleasing, and while she was asking, isn't it? And absolutely, that is right. That is what the fawn is. My response is going to be to please you, to be that yes man, to tell you what you need to hear, just to buy me some time to maybe get out of the situation. There's this could be a whole other conversation.
Almost a fold. The fold,
right?
Which is another F, by the way. Coincidentally.
The F's. We say we don't have to get it out. but
Jeez, man.
But you know what I mean. But it reminds me a lot of like in true crime. I'm huge into true crime, and I think about the F's,
mm-hmm.
And the fawn is when you're in that abusive DV type of relationship, it's just get you to
right
the next stepping stone.
Yeah.
And absolutely that happens a lot with trauma responses. There's something I've been following on TikTok lately, and we don't have to go into detail with it, but for an example, there is a huge coverage right now of a policeman started firing his gun, thinking he had been shot, thinking that he had heard pulling of the trigger. I'm trying to be careful of the words I use
Yeah,
because
I
I'm not
get
good
it.
at this. So bear with.
Yeah, it's tough.
And people are making fun of him because come to find out it was an acorn falling from the tree
Yeah.
that hit the top of to the innocent eye. We want to say, oh, well, he shouldn't be a cop. He, shouldn't have certain privileges. There are these tests that you take
Yeah.
for, psychological
Stress
tests
and
that you take.
psychological, yeah, all that.
But there are triggers that can happen at any time that you don't know is going to happen,
For
and
sure.
so I will say I'm given the shorthand of the story, so allow grace for that. I do think there are repercussions for every action, regardless if there's a PTSD, CPTSD, BPD diagnosis, bipolar. There's still so know that I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
But this man, this cop was, in the military. He had been in war, and he experienced a trigger, and his trauma response was like he truly, I believe that he truly felt that he was shot.
Right.
Even when you're watching the video camera footage, he's like, I was hit.
Yeah.
He was
Brain does weird
never hit.
things.
Nothing happened,
Hmm.
Um, and so people want to say, well, wasn't there psychological testing? Absolutely there were, but you never know what's going to
That's right.
set you off. I had it personally shared this story several times on my podcast, and I think maybe even last week or on one of our lives, I shared the story of when after my of attempted unaliving, after I got to a place where I felt comfortable trying to live on my own again, I had to have Comcast because I maintained my apartment bills to keep my apartment. Um, but of course, I wasn't using the internet and cable. So little things like that, I had cut off. There's no need to pay for it. I'm not using it. And so Xfinity had to come back out
I
after,
remember you telling me this story. Right.
and my doorbell rings. I knew someone from Comcast, or Xfinity was coming. I look out the peephole and I see a beard. I see a man
Hmm.
with a beard, and I reacted. My brother had a beard, and I didn't react that way. And he was a huge part of my recovery.
Right.
My father, who was a huge part of my recovery, I didn't react that way to him. It was the stranger with the beard.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can't go into I'm traumatized. I want to be triggered. These are my triggers, and point blank done. Like there are going to
Right.
be things that happen, and so I don't know, like this whole like cop thing is just like me, and we can end that conversation and scenario. But for prime example, I truly believe he thought that he heard gunshots. I truly believe that he thought he was shot. I think that he thought he was back in that ground, that war zone. But moving forward from that, there are trauma responses, and they're going to be generally based, right? You have your buckets of F's,
Right.
but there are those sub buckets, those little buckets under where maybe certain diagnosis comes into play. So my first question to you, Kevin, is on a BPD level, what have you found for yourself and or however you want to answer, it can be a two-parter. What have you found for yourself to be a trauma response when you were battling with your and with maybe your a common trauma response for your clients who are brand new to remission?
Sure. Well, say that like I mentioned before, everybody is different who has borderline personality disorder. It does manifest differently. Now that our triggers are very common. There's high commonality between our triggers. We don't like being disrespected. We don't like being unheard. We don't like being unappreciated. We don't like being criticized. We don't like being judged. We don't like feeling not good enough. We don't like having failed the expectation versus reality, which is where we go into a situation thinking it will turn out one way, but it turns out another way. That's a trigger. If it doesn't go exactly our way, that is a common trigger for us. Now, we have many others, and I can go on and on about that, but I have noticed that emotions are tied to triggers. Emotions become the symptoms become the episodes or the splits. Now, you can call any part of that our trauma response, technically. You can call the symptom fear of abandonment a trauma response. We start out in life abandoned to some degree or having some type of situation that creates trauma, we become a victim. So every point in our life, when we start feeling something's not right, the fear of abandonment kicks on. That could be a trauma response. Really, it's a symptom, and it's triggered by something, which creates the emotion, which creates the symptom. So, how we handle that, almost like those games where you drop a quarter or something at the top and it goes through the pegs and it lands. You don't know, like you
Ah,
start up here and it might end up on the left at the end. It's kind of like that for
yeah.
every person that I work with. And it's almost like that before you know yourself, before remission, it's almost as if you're playing that game. I don't know what'll happen. I got triggered. I feel disrespected. I'm in a public setting. Now, once you get to remission, you realize that there's all these patterns. Like you were describing how, I have a brother that has a beard. That was not a trigger, but when the stranger had the beard, that was a trigger. Well, same goes for me. I might hear one thing in private. My wife might say something in private. Oh, don't say that out loud. She could say that in private and I'm not triggered. Now we go in line at the movie theater and she says something out loud to where I think other people can hear the same thing she would have said in indoors in closed spaces. Now all of a sudden I'm triggered, and that quarter, since I don't know where I am, who I am, or how and I haven't mapped my patterns, I drop it. Tink, 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 tink. Over here, all of a sudden, now we're angry. What's around me? There's a vending machine. I'm going to punch the vending machine. Violence, anger, right? Yeah, yes. You take another situation. I'm at a family party and I feel like somebody disrespected me. They said something like, or I feel unwanted or rejected, another common trigger for us. Maybe an example was I was at a family event one time. Everybody from my family was there, and my immediate family moved away. Very rarely meet people, but I know they're part of my family, and I see them once every 4 to 10 years, something like that. This is massive gathering for my grandfather's 80-something birthday. And one of my aunts looks at me and says, "Well, you always were the black sheep of the family." Embarrassment, unwanted, common triggers, brew an emotion that I let fill in my emotional tank. As it grew and grew, I became more and more sensitive. Eventually, I would lash out at a few people there, and then eventually I would flight. I would run. I hid out in my car for the rest of that experience. I left, or I would oftentimes find myself packing my bags in the middle of the night and running from my relationship. Okay, flight. There's all types of delineations of this. Now, I'm not going to say that people to map that out. But what I am going to say here to kind of round off this particular answer is there are patterns. There are there's a plethora of patterns. There's a lexicon of patterns, okay? And if you take the time to start identifying these patterns, and it might be as simple as, hey, I'm going to take a calendar, that stupid calendar that they send me every year, part of work or whatever. I don't use it. Sitting in the closet. It might be 3 months into the year, and it's, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like nobody's
Yeah.
touched it. Pull it out, go to this month, and every time you have an episode, big red X on that day. You might start to find, like I did, that all your episodes happen on the weekend. Why? Why? Well, the circumstances are different, and you have an ability to spend the energy there. You don't have to be responsible. There's no work. That's an example. So look for the patterns, guys, and you will start to find when you choose fight or flight, or fawning or whatever it may be. And then you can start to analyze those buckets and what to do about it. I think I got everything you asked, I think.
Yeah. There you go. I had a big realization the past few months. So most people know my story. If not, I'm an open book. I've got a podcast about it.
It's in our profile and the link
Yeah,
tree,
yeah,
Surviving Podcast.
yeah. So I went through this phase when I'm thinking of the F's, right? The
Hmm.
fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I went to this phase after learning what happened to me, and then living in my home with my family because I no longer live by myself. I thought someone wants me to not be here anymore, and now I'm living in my family's home, which
Right.
means when they find me to finish the job, I've now put my family in danger. So I felt
Mm,
responsible for that, which was devastating, right? Because I had that mindset of if I couldn't even put up a fight or protect myself then, I definitely can't now, beaten and bruised, you know?
right.
And then a few months ago, I had the robbery situation at the gas station. And what I found was that I'm a lot of the freeze F. I freeze, and that terrified me, but also made me very mad. you know.
Right. I get that.
Um. So I went through this whole like mind of I can't protect myself. Obviously, I'm weak. I I can't put up a fight. And then I went through the phase of did I not put up a fight because I don't feel that I'm worth the fight?
Hmm.
That that
Interesting.
if if one hit is all it takes, is that because I don't love or care enough for myself, and that the universe is like, "Meh, you're just the weak link and voted off the island kind of thing. Like it was a huge battle that I've had.
Hmm. That's super interesting.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people who have BPD fight that same type of battle. Sometimes don't feel good enough for anything. So what's the point in fighting at all? And then when it comes time to saving something like our reputation or our face, so to speak, you know, um, we care very little about this process. We are so quick to throw things to the wind because we definitely don't feel like we deserve it. I'll tell you that right now. So it's interesting that it happened to you after the trauma because I suspect that that is also the case for many BPD people. It just so happens that most of our trauma happens much earlier in life. So we just look at it like this is us living life this way.
yeah,
But you seem to have identified that commonality between trauma in general and BPD. Man, it can hit you at any age and it changes your. How can you not look at the world differently? that happens. You know, it's like even if it's micro scale, let's say that your best friend, let's say David here says something really negative about me on a phone call, right? And it's super negative and it's super spiteful, and let's just say he rips me to shreds, which he could do if he really tried, all right? So anyway, he might be one of the only
I
people
don't
who
know that
could
it
do
would
it.
take too much
Yeah,
effort,
yeah.
Kevin.
Well,
I'm just
whatever. Let's not let everybody. But the point is he rips me to shreds. Now, even if he apologizes later, right? I still am forced to look at him differently. How can I not? Because something that was previously safe turf has become something that is volatile and potentially hazardous to me. Now, BPD people naturally look at life that way, and I think that most people who suffer trauma are forced to look at life that way. You can't look at the same, you can't go back to that guy attacked you and look at that place the same way. You're always going to have a guard up. You're always going to be looking over your shoulder. You're never going to feel safe or comfortable at any gas station, probably ever again. You have to
right.
look at it that way. Now, I think that's a good thing. It's a built-in defense mechanism to A, make sure that we retain dignity if the trauma is microscale and interpersonal with other people. B, it is called a flight or fight response for a reason, because it's our innate way of protecting ourselves. The problem with trauma is it activates it in scenarios that seem silly to the outside world, like the acorn on the top that thinks he's shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We should probably steer clear of that whole conversation, though. I'm starting to think about it. Just the S word.
You're probably right.
I don't know. I mean, look, they're fickle here, and you never know. It's not. Right.
Right,
So
right.
anyway,
So
but the
far, so
point
good.
is people freak out about stuff that doesn't matter sometimes to the outside world. What the outside world doesn't realize is it matters to the person that's freaking out. And you can't sidestep that type of pain and say to yourself, now, they're right. I can't freak out every time I hear a tap on my window from the, you know, tree that's growing right there in the wintertime. You know what I mean? That little tap, tap, tap on the window from the tree branch. Can't freak out like that, even though somebody had previously broken in my house at some point. I mean, that makes no sense. You're gonna panic. You're gonna freak out. Part of it is preventative. You have to look at situations with realistic expectation versus reality all the time. Real life, real time skills that are necessary to be able to put these types of situations to a halt. And I think that living life like that, knowing that you can't control the triggers, but preparing for them, you can't stop an invading country. They want to come invade. Somebody wants to come in Canada. You know, likely scenario. Canada, no offense, guys. Canada invades America. Right? Well, we can't stop Canada from marching troops over here. I mean, we can stand up and put our armor on and try. That's why we have a standing military. I mean, it's a sad world that you have to prepare like that, but even our government acts this way. So why is it so nonsensical that somebody with trauma is a little rattled? Makes total sense to me. In fact, I would think there's something wrong. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
what do you think about that? That makes sense to you?
Oh, yeah. It makes perfect sense. And what keeps running through my mind right now is just the power of words. I think that we forget the power that words have, and um, let me preface with saying the story that I'm going to tell you guys, it'll be quick and it leads to a good question. Um, but don't come for anybody. Like that's not what I'm trying to do, with this story. But uh, my first partner, my first boyfriend, the first guy that I had so many firsts with, was my everything, And it's been a long time since we've been together. We had a great conversation after my trauma 9 years ago. We had already been broken up for quite a while, but then my trauma was very public, so we reached out, we talked. I heard things that I just truly needed to hear. And weeks ago, I found out that he unexpectedly had passed away, and so that caused all these memories and emotions, to come up, good and bad. And
Right.
one of the things that came up that was bad, which he did apologize for, is I remember when he told me that I'm the kind of person that could go into a bar and everyone would want to F me, but no one would want to love me. And
Mm.
that, to this day,
Still cut deep, huh?
sticks with me. And granted, he apologized for it. It was him being insecure, trying to make me insecure to help
Right.
him be uninsecure or develop
Yeah.
insecure. It's just a snowball effect. But my question for you with telling that story is, how do these feelings and memories affect you or a BPD person? However you want to take the question or answer the question is fine. But how do these feelings or memories affect your daily activities and relationships?
Well, memories are feelings. Memory is stored emotion. The more emotional a event or an interaction, the more vivid and stronger the memory. Now, the more vivid a negative memory, unfortunately, because we feel so out of touch with ourselves and we have such self-loathing that we often think from such a negative perspective pre-remission, the negative emotions are always going to be heavier in weight. I don't know why that is, but that is what it is. When we think back and I ask a client, I'm like, let's think of some good times. Let me hear some of the best times because I'm trying to identify certain things. I just have them recant positive memories. Sometimes I have a specific directive in my head of what I want to do. It's very hard for my clients and me pre remission to come up with good memories. Now, if I ask them to name some negative memories, I will just rattle them all off left and right. No problem at all. We'll keep going all day. You got more time? I can sit here, you know, and that is a shame. Now, the problem with negative memories are we tie them to certain physical world things, physical world elements. For example, that time that we were at the park and we had a fight. I'll remember that forever. I won't remember the 200 different times I played soccer there as a kid, the 4 times that I flew a drone, with my father, whatever it may be, right? Like you have all these different
Right.
memories. I won't go and recant these the next time. I'm going to recant the number one memory that was most emotional, which cut me deepest, which went straight to the heart. And that memory is always going to be that negative one. So now that park has become a negative place. The idea of any park has become a negative place. You drive down the road as a BPD person, if you've lived in the same town your whole life, negative memory, negative memory, negative, 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 negative. That place, I have a lot of that negative memory. So we're walking through life, and then there's the ultimate, there's the, I don't want to use the word micro scale for this, but I'm struggling to find out. There's a more trite everyday type of situation. Like we fought at grocery stores. We fought with the mail lady. We have fought with the police people at some point. We fought, with every single person, teachers, this, that, coworkers. Our job then becomes a trauma center. Everything in our life becomes trauma oriented. So we become this very ourselves, moving through the world, really paranoid about what everybody and everything in the whole world thinks about us, which is why one of the number one things I focus on is removing the guilt, blame, shame, and embarrassment, because we literally cannot afford this anymore. You can't
No.
do this but so long before we're predisposed to having heart attacks. We are literally predisposed to have and a whole slew of other health concerns. And it's because we're living this way on a daily basis. You have to learn to let the past go. And the only way that I have to round off this answer is to be able to do that is by looking at it completely objectively, like it isn't my own past. I play the memory in my head as if it's someone else's movie, not my own. I'm like, yeah, he was upset. He was irate. He got violent. He broke the dish. Like this is what happened. This and outcome was, and then this is how it made me feel. That's important to note too, without re-experiencing it, because the amygdala doesn't know the difference. If you are truly present in the past, if you close your eyes right now, you could do it with a positive memory. I'll imagine the time that I was, I'd earned enough. I was selling honeysuckles door to door. I'm like 6 or 7 years old. I earned enough money to be able to pay for the entire neighborhood. All ice cream truck came. I remember giving my sister the Ninja Turtle one. I love the Ninja Turtle one. I remember how it tasted. I'm re-experiencing the whole emotion. I get the emotional content of that. The problem is we don't know how to turn that valve off as BPD people, and we think so negatively that we constantly re-immerse these negative experiences in real time, re-invoking all the negative emotions, continuing this pattern of us feeling predisposed to anything negative, anything at all. And anger, rage, regret, depression, rejection. So it's a never-ending cycle. But power is in shutting off, being able to shut off emotional content when you look at the past. That is when the power emerges to use the past as a lesson. That's really why you're subconsciously memorizing these things anyway. Your brain's not like, oh, I'm going to screw this guy. Negative. That's all he's going to think about. I'm going to just screw him over. No, my brain's like, lesson, lesson, lesson. Remember this. Important. Really important. Same with the good stuff. That person made me feel good. That was satisfying. I got a lot of intrinsic value. The reward was great for that. So I think that I got it. I keep doing this thing where I can't even remember the question, but somehow the car is still driving
You
down the right
always
road.
nail it, man. You always nail it.
I end up there.
So no problem. A memory that you sparked in me is a technique that you and I talked about this off the record. Is I'm trying to eliminate the word but. And so when you were talking about memories, like driving through the neighborhood you grew up in, it's like, oh, good memory, bad memory, good memory. Like it sparked something in me. Like I remember times of driving through my neighborhood and saying,
Right.
oh, I did this here, but then,
But then, yeah.
and it could be the smallest, but then it could be the smallest, but I'm comfortable in the trauma. I'm comfortable in the negativity.
Right.
So I'm when things are happy and blissful, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is where I had my first kiss. It was so amazing. Then I want to say, but it was with a girl. And kind of like shrug my shoulder to it. It doesn't matter. It was my first kiss. It doesn't matter if it was with a girl or not, but we find ourselves comfortable in that uncomfortable feeling. Um, I always try to task people with things, and I also task myself with things. Excuse me 1 minute. Sorry. I was afraid that y'all could hear my cough drop in my mouth, so I wanted to spit it out. Sorry, guys. I'm doing
Fair
the best.
enough.
I'm doing the best I can here. But I've been tasking myself here lately is I had a podcast episode that hasn't been released yet, but it was with this amazing person, and they tasked me to remove the word but out of
Hmm.
my vocabulary in reason, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's got to be there. Even he and I just having that conversation, I was like, oh my gosh. It's like, I want to say, I want to go to Starbucks and I want to get my favorite coffee, but there's 3 cars in line. So what? I've got a podcast to listen to, I've got a text message to return. I can sit in silence and it's fine. Like, why is everything a but? You
Well, I
know?
mean, if they're ordering pumpkin spice, whatever, yeah, it's going to take forever.
Fair enough.
Black coffee kind of guy, so I'm in and out. But you
Fair
get
enough.
them pumpkin
Maybe that
spice, people in there
maybe
five
that wasn't the
minutes.
best analogy, but
I'm just kidding.
oh,
I'm just
no, no, no,
joking.
I know you are. I love it, but the analogy that I keep running through my mind when I hear myself say "bud," it's almost like my brain highlights that word now,
The negative.
and I think of when because I literally had the conversation of here's what happened my first kiss, it was with a girl.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade that for the world. Why am I putting a "but"
Yeah.
to it?
Right.
Like it was a safe place for me. It was
Insecurity, you think it
it,
is?
that
Is that what it is?
I,
Because
I,
that's worth investigating. I got to be honest with you.
and you know what? That is a whole other Tuesday night podcast episode or live
Yeah.
that we will do. That is a whole other tangent we can absolutely that plays a factor. But
Yeah.
I shouldn't put butts to the things that were very impactful to me. Like I think about that kiss with Stephanie and I smile. My first kiss didn't have to be with a boy, just because,
Yeah.
like that kiss helped me get to where I am today. Blah blah. Anyways,
Stepping stones.
but I can't wait to learn more about myself when I use the word but,
Why you're doing it.
and and to hopefully share that with
Yeah.
people. Um, so we are a few minutes before the last 15 minutes, and obviously we haven't got to pay a lot of attention to the comments, and I appreciate um,
The incredible person.
Liz and yeah, taking care of
I
all of us
saw
things. So,
Jeremy in there. I've seen a lot of
oh, nice.
friendly faces. Yeah, a lot of people are here. Deeply Confused is here. I appreciate everybody who
Yeah,
joins every day. It's
yeah,
so helpful, and you guys are what make the community so great to where I don't need an alarm clock to wake up in the morning for this.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And when talking to her, and she is dealing with the stuff I'm getting
Yeah,
over. Hers
so
is
I
now
hear.
hitting.
I
But she
feel
was
so
like, you know
bad
what? I'm
for
going
her,
to be
man.
there. I know, but she's like, you know what? I'm going to be there. I was like,
I
even if you
saw
fall
her in here.
asleep
Yeah, I
through it,
know. I
it's
was
fine.
surprised.
So I would like to spend the last 15 minutes, looking through comments. So uh, if anybody sees anything that we should touch on, let us know in the comments. But uh, to allow some time for that, the last question that I have for you, Kevin, before we kind of focus on the
Sure.
comments before we close out, is um, what coping mechanisms have you found to be helpful with dealing with BPD and trauma and traumas?
Sure. I've good. This is a good opportunity. I haven't told the community this about me, actually. I don't even think I've told you this about me. Firstly, I always do this. This isn't what I mean when I say that, but I'm going to prelude with this, which is I always like to focus on the good, not the bad. And I've noticed that that's the pre-remission me and the remission me the last 6 years. I've
Mm,
been very optimistic, very positive. I've been the shining light in the room that's always like, nah, we can do this. We can do this no matter what. We've got this. Pull together, that kind of thing, right? With that said, I was thinking about this while you were telling your story, and it fits perfect into this. I have always been an entrepreneur, always worked. I've always been trying to do something. I've been a very small lad. But when I became 13, I was eligible to have a, quote unquote real job, and I didn't have to hustle at that point. One of my friends, his mother owned a company. It was called Support Services of Virginia. It's still around to my knowledge, to my best of knowledge now, to this day. It focused on anyone mentally challenged, a whole slew of different situations. We had severely debilitated autism. We severely schizophrenic, people who are arrested in development at certain ages. They were full grown individuals, but they had the mentality of an 8-year-old, let's say. I've been in the most extremely awkward, extremely violent, extremely serious situations from age 13. I worked my butt off every summer all the way throughout high school, starting 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I put it in there. I would, be out in the driveway. His mom would pick me up. The point I'm making here is I developed incredible empathy at an early age. And I have found that the most important skill for us to learn, it isn't even a skill for ourselves. I've learned that the most important thing that will help you get to validation, help you get to remission, help you solve issues, triggers, symptoms, the whole thing, even episodes and splits getting out of it, is having empathy for other people. You have that skill down and you're doing it selflessly. Oh, I know that person just said something that cut me deep. My wife will say something once in a while. Yeah, well, you just blah, blah, blah under her breath and it hurt. And I'm like, and she knew it was going to hurt. She just said it, whatever. But I have incredible empathy for that. I don't come back at her and say, well, you blah, 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 and just turn it around. And I've noticed that the borderline individuals who work with me who adopt pure heart, pure soul kind of thing, they move so much faster. They move so much faster. There is a superpower in BPD when it comes to empathy. It doesn't get highlighted that often because we have some selfish subconscious things laced into our brain that say, well, I've done all this for them. I deserve more. I deserve this. I deserve that. That resentment kills it. You have to learn to let the resentment go. And you have to say to yourself, look, my day's awful, but you know what? Someone else out, because if you're not making someone else's life better, then what the hell is the point? I mean, you might as well just go live on an island or move to Alaska. I used to talk about that all the time. It's because I wasn't getting back what I was putting in. And to hell with what you're getting back right now. Be the change you want to see in the world. The value you get from that is so ridiculous, so strong. You will literally shine right through dark clouds. I mean, I swear to God, it's amazing. It's amazing. Anybody can do this. You have to have anyone. And this is a way that I think will help people get through the trauma. If you don't know what to do, if you don't know where to start by helping somebody else. Just look at your neighbor, look at your mother, look at your sister, your brother, your kids. The guy at the grocery store who's struggling to reach the top, or the woman who's struggling to get to her car. Help out someone else and watch what happens. Greatness comes when you start practicing true empathy. It will change your entire life. So I think that that's what is the butterfly analogy? Yeah, as Liz says, to transition in the comments, that's a perfect one. We can go up there and check some other ones out. A butterfly flaps its wings over here in Japan, and a hotel appears in California. You know what I mean? I spend 1 minute extra saying one extra thing to one of my clients, and the next thing you know, they're opening their own clinic. I had a client reach out to me the other day, and they said, Kevin, I haven't. She said, Kevin, I want you to know I'm doing great. Everything's awesome. I started my own support group for BPD here. She said California somewhere. I don't know exactly where. It's thriving. And I'm thinking to myself, I threw a rope down, pulled this person up. They turn around, they start throwing ropes down, helping other people up. Now, here's the real kicker. What are all those people going to do? All the people that she touched. Who knows, man? I mean, who knows what kind of charitable or volunteer organization next year? You don't know. All you know is you have control over yourself and what's in front of you. And if you're going to play the game that is life, then you might as well play the best possible game you can. And you know what matters? Not the journey, not the destination, not where you are right now or where you've been. It's the company along the way. That's what makes life so beautiful. So those are all my opinions on that. You want to take over for a minute?
I love all of your opinions. So 10 minutes left, and I know that we haven't paid too much attention to the comments. I do see like Shorty just asked a question, and guys, if we miss anything like during the live, obviously, please DM us. We were not ignoring. It's Tuesday nights. We kind of have like our uh, set. We still, but
Trauma Tuesday.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But Shorty said, what's a couple of coping mechanisms that you use to get out of an episode?
Okay. Well, when we talked about the beginning, and if you were here for the beginning of the live, if you missed that, we were talking about how BPD manifests differently for different people. We all have different types of episodes. Some of us are isolating. Some of us engage in SH or some other real. Some of us are raging. We're angry. We're yelling, screaming. Some of us destroy property. There's all types of things that can happen in an episode. So I think the first thing, if you can't be preventative and you haven't already caught on ahead of time, because that would be the best answer, is let's just avoid the whole thing. You're already in the middle of it. I think awareness plays a big part here. When you recognize that there is a warning sign, an object is being held, used, thrown, whatever, being thrown, threats being made, or voices are getting raised. Those are what I mean by when I say warning signs. You have to remove yourself from the scenario. Now, your emotional tank is going to drop at a much slower rate than a neurotypical person. That is just part of being BPD. It's going to keep reemerging. So the number one thing that you can do when you're having an episode is remove yourself from other people, because most of the time episodes require an audience. Not all the time, but enough of the time to where that's a pretty now, what you do in that time when you're apart from them matters. You can't just sit there and sulk the whole time. So I say give yourself a set amount of time, say an hour, maybe two, right? In the first half, be angry, be depressed, get out whatever emotion that you're feeling honestly by yourself, okay? Don't call another third party because they're just going to placate us. It's got to be by yourself. You could say it out loud, whatever. Be depressed. Listen to some music that's depressing, first half hour, whatever. Second half, you got to be constructive. You got to try what the other person was thinking, why they would say what they said, why they did what they did, what the common goal is here. Are you friends? Were you friends for the last 10 months or 10 years? Why all of a sudden now are you not friends? They didn't mean to not be friends with you, probably, right? So find those commonalities, those common goals, and then when you come back, make sure that they feel heard, okay? That you get it right, and then you have to have a compromise, a negotiation, something to offer where both people can win and nobody's sad. That is where I think we are on that for the blanket answer. Sorry that took so much time.
No, it was amazing. So we
Thanks.
have a few minutes left, and what I do have on the docs for us to talk about one day, which maybe next Tuesday, is the difference between positivity and toxic positivity. The reason I'm bringing that up is we have a few minutes left, and I want to end on a high note because I know that for myself, what makes me good, what I need is to end on high notes,
Me too.
but not toxic positivity.
Sure.
And so So I think that maybe next week that's what we'll discuss is the difference because I get a lot of questions about that.
Okay.
So the reason I threw that in there is that this is not toxic positivity. This is positivity. But I want to end on a good high note, and I would love to hear from your inner child, Kevin. And I'm so afraid that
Hmm.
people are going to get. I don't want to ever be that person that's like, oh God, here's David with that inner damn child again. But I'm probably going to be that person because I freaking love my inner child. His name is Davy Baby, and the reason I named him that is favorite, my favorite teacher in elementary school who seen me, heard me, loved me. Uh, I had her in third grade, and then she moved up to fourth grade. I, she requested me, and she always called me Davy Baby, and because David was a common name then, like 10 years ago, and so like that's what I've named my inner child, and so
Right.
when I feel myself getting like inner childish, I'm like, oh, that's Davy Baby. But I would love to hear a story about you, and it doesn't have to be a current one, but just when you notice that inner child.
Later in life, you mean?
Anytime. Like if someone says the words to you, inner child, what comes to your mind?
Oh, well. The the kid in me never died. The child that I was is still here. That never went away. I was just the sweetest, most caring kid ever have been. I really put the world first, and I had no doubts that it was the right thing to do. If I think back to before my trauma, age 6, even afterwards, I just wanted everyone else to feel good. When other people would trip and fall in the mud and everybody would be laughing, I would go trip in the mud on purpose just so they weren't by themselves. I was
Yeah.
that kind of person, and I've always been that kind of person. That person never left, and I re experienced those same emotions that I felt as a 3 year old boy. The generosity that I would have then, it just felt innate because it was the right thing to do. And I also was the most ambitious. I just believed in anything, no matter what. And that has not gone away either to this very day. I mean, I still believe in each and every single one of you. I think that every single one of us could do anything that we put our minds to it. It's not a positive manifesting bullshitty kind of thing. I think that a lot of us are beaten down to the point where our inner child can't have a voice anymore. Something about this little boy's voice, though, was so damn loud that it echoed throughout all of time. And I see it across every age of my entire life, and it is likely to never stop. It's contagious, contagious thing. And I
Yeah.
think that you're really onto something with that whole connecting ourselves to, you are you the kid hero in you? Really, that kid hero that knew he could do anything and he was unstoppable and no goal was unreasonable and nothing was out of reach and you could literally climb any mountain. You could be president of the United States if you wanted to, live in a mansion, be a billionaire, be whatever it is that you want to be. Somebody somewhere in time says, "Oh, nope, you can't do that. You're thinking too big. Why don't you just go do this? Why don't you go do that?" But when you reconnect with that inner child, I'm more close to the 4 year old me than I've ever been in my life, and I'm a 38-year-old man,
Yeah.
and I feel so close to that. That's a good question, man. Nicely done.
I don't now. Like, okay, so I've seen some of the comments come through as soon as I mentioned the inner child because at first I was like, oh gosh, I'm gonna go here. David goes again, but I was wrong. Like, you all like me. I'm just kidding. But no.
Of course,
So
man.
um, and I don't want us to go over too long. That's sad. I created and published an effect on TikTok, an AI filter for inner child. Please message us about that. Like, I'm obsessed.
That's pretty cool.
And then Bree or Bry, and I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, says, I just wrote a song about this very subject.
Damn.
Jeremy said, I've done that, and I think he was responding to what you were saying with if someone falls in a mud puddle, I'll go jump in the mud puddle too. That way they're not the only one. I think
Oh
that
yeah,
a
Jeremy's
thing.
got a big heart, man. He's got.
And I know this will sound corny and silly, but like when I noticed Jeremy in the chats in the lives, in the beginning, was one of the first regulars,
Yeah,
and his picture is of a car, and I remember having the thought in my head of, I'm not going to understand a word of this, but
that's not a car, man. I'm pretty sure that's like a Bronco or something. I'm not 100% sure because
what?
my vision's not that good. But
That's still a car, right? I do the best I
no,
can,
no,
Kevin.
it's
I do the best I
anyway.
can. No, Bree or Bryce said that they just wrote a song about this. Like, if you're not a part of the Discord, please join. And
Yeah,
if there's
share
a
it
way
there.
to send that to us,
We
like,
have a whole
please.
channel for that. Things I made.
Yeah, I would love
Me
to
too.
hear it. And make sure you tag me in it. I would love to hear it.
Agree,
Um,
bro.
Deeply conflicted. Thank you for all that you do. Like, I message you in Discord privately, and I'm like, I don't know how to copy and paste, and you're like, oh, just touch this button. Like, you're amazing. Thank you for being there. Um, but yeah, I guess that's it, guys. Uh, I just really appreciate this community,
Me too.
and I love learning and growing and sharing all my knowledge, which took about 3 minutes. So.
No, you got a lot to share, man. It is all of you that make this something that's worth doing. And if you guys weren't here, um, there'd be no point in me just talking David's ear off and then, you know, having him bounce the same things off of me every day. So we really appreciate you all. We're glad that you're here. And we want to invite you to join us tomorrow at 7 a.m. US EST, where we go live Monday through Friday and we talk about topics related to BPD. If you haven't already followed David's podcast, there's a link in my link tree. We talk about surviving. That's his merch right there. Give him a shout out. It really helps us when you guys download those episodes, by the way. It really does. So even if you don't have time to listen to it helps us get the algorithm. But thank you guys for everything. You have anything else to add, David?
Nope. I will see you guys bright and early.
All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow and see you in the Discord for the conversation that continues and never ends. Have a good night.